Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So today is August 7th, 2021. And while most work that we do at IO Global, about 50% or more, is in the Cardano sphere, people tend to forget that we work on many different pieces of infrastructure, products, and services. And one of the pieces of infrastructure that we work on is Ethereum Classic. And we've actually worked on it twice. So a history lesson back in the day, and I'm getting so old in this space, I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2017. I think it was 2016. There was the DAO hack, and shortly thereafter, people started making decisions whether they were neutral, they supported the fork, or were against the fork. And so, as one of the Ethereum founders, I waited a bit to see what all the other Ethereum founders said. And when it became clear that the majority of them were going to support the fork, I felt it was problematic because the people who invested in Ethereum, who participated in the initial ICO, there wasn't a strong social contract there. And some invested with a code is law mentality. Gavin Wood created a term called illegality. And there were dozens of other people that believed in this code that can't lie, can't fail philosophy. And Stefan Tual had done marketing and got the Ethereum Foundation to push this concept of the world computer. And these seemed to be the same until the DAO hack occurred. And then it actually turned out that they were different. So the Code is Law group said, wow, that DAO thing is quite unfortunate. It's a shame some people lost their money. We'll just have to move on. Oh, well, it's like Mt. Gox. It's an event. Nothing needs to be done. And the world computer people said, well, the existential problem of having an event like this occur will damage the credibility of the platform to an extent that we may lose our ability to continue building the smart contract ecosystem. So we should bail them out. And I'm paraphrasing both. There's a lot more nuances in this case. Well, because only one side got represented with all the capital, I thought it would be prudent to support the other side so that that side got some love. And that at the very least, the people who invested, they'd have both options apparent ready. So I put my money where my mouth was. I hired a whole team of Scala developers. We wrote the very first Scala version of an Ethereum client. It was a full node, run the Ethereum code. It at one point could connect to the Ethereum network and the Ethereum Classic network. We funded Let's Talk ETC with Christian Severino and Carlos Vicari. We funded some community management, and we attended all the conferences. And we were in the ETC world for almost 2 years. We also brought in Grigori Roshu at that time, and we were the first firm to finance the formalization of the Ethereum virtual machine with K. The problem is that both Vitalik and me are the first to admit, as is Gavin, as is everybody else who works in Ethereum in a technical capacity, that the original design of Ethereum is unstable. It's too complicated for what it wants to do, but not complicated enough to actually do what it needs to do. So basically, the issue is that if it's left to its own devices, the system basically becomes untenable with adoption. And that's what you're seeing right now with ETH1. That's why ETH2 exists, and that's why there's a very aggressive technological movement to migrate from ETH1 to ETH2. And if that migration is successful, then they've moved much closer to that long-term dream of world computer. And they're utilizing fundamentally different technology, proof of stake and sharding and all kinds of weird layer 2 stuff like optimistic rollups and so forth, in an attempt to accomplish that end. The issue is that the philosophy of code is law. First, it's not explicit. There was no Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine of that church to write down the doctrine of that philosophy. But of what is codified in the lore of ETC, it's difficult to establish how the roadmap of Ethereum 2 is compatible with the vision that ETC has now in that illegality, that code is law world. So at some point, likely in the next 12 to 24 months, the innovations and advancements of Ethereum 2 will not be compatible or downstream or upstream of Ethereum Classic. So they can't copy paste anymore. So that means that ETC is losing its innovation budget. Second, ETC is not like Bitcoin, where it can revel in its simplicity and stay the same way and do the same thing for 25 years, 30 years, and just absorb some niche for that. The design of Ethereum is not fit for purpose in the code is law sense. So it's in an unstable place, and it's losing its innovation funding source in both science and code to be able to continue getting better. So what does this mean? It means that unless a new innovation funding source comes in from volunteerism, a patron, or a treasury system, there's just simply not going to be the funding necessary to field the tens of millions of dollars required to systematically change ETC so that it can be its own chain. Now, we proposed years ago a treasury system. And at the time, the politics of ETC were such that they preferred a Bitcoin-style volunteerism approach. After 6 months of fighting, I said, it's an interesting experiment. I have Cardano. We have other things we're working on. So what we're going to do is retire the Mantis project, reassign the developers elsewhere in the company, and let's see where ETC goes. So we left. And we saw 3 years of no progress, no major innovations, no major changes, not a lot of adoption. And it got so bad last year that ETC started becoming the victim of numerous 51% attacks. So we said, all right, we're kind of emotionally connected to this. We put millions of dollars into the ecosystem. Let's come back and propose some common sense things. First off, let's talk about how to solve the immediate problems of 51% attacks. So we said, let's talk about checkpointing. We produced papers like Advocate and the BFT checkpointing paper. It talked about the science of checkpointing. And we wrote ECIPs, Ethereum Classic Improvement Proposals. All the while doing that, getting brutally attacked by some people who apparently have already left the ETC ecosystem. Second, we said there needs to be a different roadmap than the roadmap of Ethereum because they're going to diverge. Ethereum's going to proof of stake. ETC needs to do its own thing. It can't stay where it's at. It's an unstable design. We see that every day. Look at your gas fees. Look, do you think that is a competitive platform when even Bitcoin itself at some point will get smart contracting capabilities at a fraction of the cost? And you're going to argue that our principles are stronger than Bitcoin's in that respect? Come on, let's be real about this. If you want to live in a fantasy land with no plan and no strategy, you can try to stay with the status quo. And then you're saying, well, we disagree with Vitalik, but we agree with Vitalik. The design of Ethereum was perfect in the beginning, but the vision of the founder was wrong. It's crazy inconsistencies. You need to really take a step back and say, things have to change. And you need an innovation budget to pay for that change. Anything can be done. You can invent new network algorithms. You can make useful proof of work. You can shard proof of work. You can really get deep in the formal verification of smart contracts. We can make an explicit doctrine and find the Thomas Aquinas of the Church of Illegality and write that doctrine down. All these things can be done. But it takes time, a team, and the team can't work for free because of the complexity of the project. Volunteerism doesn't work well when a project is hyper complicated. Just imagine that you're building a skyscraper and you say, well, we'll just do it as an open source volunteer skyscraper. And then everybody's just going to show up and do their work. Would you trust that building? You'll have variable quality all throughout it and it'll never get completed. The more complicated a project, the more specialized the team has to be working on it. And those teams require resources. Volunteerism didn't work for years. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So that's probably not going to get us there. The patron model means that ETC is owned and operated by one or a few entities, the rich people. And believe it or not, if I wanted to control ETC, I'm in a financial position where I could be that guy. Say, oh, sure, pay for everything, and we'll just move it in this particular direction. But that is not good for decentralization. It hurts the entire ecosystem by having one or two rich guys basically pay for everything and decide where everything is going to go. So I've always argued that the third option, a treasury system, makes sense. And there's been so many lies told about this and so many misconceptions about basic economics. Let's be very clear about something. When a blockchain mints money through inflation, that money doesn't belong automatically to one group of people like miners. That is a money made to pay for a service being provided to the blockchain. The killer application of that was mining. That's what Bitcoin does. But every person in ETC pays that price, inflation. And right now, the idea is that money is automatically owned by the miners. This is the first lie that's being told in an anti-treasury campaign again and again and again. It is money that belongs to the people of ETC because they pay for it through inflation. The ETC I hold, the ETC other people hold, is worth a little less because more has entered circulation. And then there's a question of allocation. What are we paying for and what are we getting? There's been numerous 51% attacks. So the mining class in ETC has from time to time shown mercenary behavior. So not exactly the best people in the world to always pay blindly. Second, all the other facilities of ETC are uncompensated and living in the volunteerism. That's why we don't see significant DApp adoption. That's why we don't see a lot of development progress on the infrastructure side. That's why we don't see a lot of marketing. That's why we see an overwhelmingly negative brand perception of ETC. A lot of people in the space say it's a dead chain and it has no future, no traction. The argument of a treasury is take some of that inflation and put it into a decentralized account to pay for the things other than just security. Things about commercialization, things about innovation, things about engineering, things about growth of the chain. This works incredibly well with Cardano and has enabled Cardano to grow tremendously quickly. Catalyst started very small. It's still in its infancy. And now every 6 to 8 weeks, we see 50 or more companies, ventures, projects, people funded. There's $600 million of value that's there. And when people consider Cardano as a chain to invest in, build in, do things in, they take into account that that chain has made provisions to pay for its evolution, its growth, and the community is in charge of that. So the idea of a treasury is you have to start before you run, and Zcash and others pioneered this model. Ensure that there are some core infrastructure companies, because there was no ICO with ETC, and enable those core infrastructure companies to be able to come up with a vision, a roadmap in sustainable, stable infrastructure that is distinctly different from ETH2, Ethereum 2, and allows us to preserve the principles that ETC was founded on. Formalize those principles, get them written down, get a great roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years. Talk about where we can innovate. And we've discussed this innovation before, things like sharded proof of work. There's a great protocol Pramod Viswanath wrote in 2018 called Prism. That protocol is 10,000 times faster than normal proof of work, but preserves the principles of Nakamoto proof of work at its core. There's been 12 years of thought since the launch of Bitcoin about how to improve proof of work. Keep the things you like, but make it faster, better, cheaper, more throughput. That's just one of dozens of innovation examples. And if there was a treasury system, the infrastructure companies can start constructing all those things. Then layering on top of that, a mechanism for dApps and third parties who agree with the philosophy of ETC. This code is law, the irreversibility of transactions, where there are very few vendors in the space where that is the raison d'etre of the chain's existence, give them an opportunity to finance their applications. So that means you have a robust, resilient ecosystem growing, And as that ecosystem gets use, utility, and adoption, the perceptions of the ecosystem change within the space. And even if it stays a small ecosystem, it's one that has a right to exist. And maybe it grows. That's the fun part about crypto. But one thing that's blatantly clear to me is you can't just stay static. It has no reason to exist right now. There is no innovation budget anymore. It's going away. The technology is not sustainable. There's no adoption. There's not going to be this magic moment where Ethereum goes to Ethereum 2 and somehow all of the dApps that disagree with proof of stake are going to simply just migrate over to Ethereum Classic as if that's a big thing. Maybe you'll get one or two. But guys, if they were already so in love with the idea that code is law and living on Ethereum, why wouldn't they migrate over to Ethereum Classic during the last 5 years? Why didn't they? They had every opportunity to do so. The technology is mirrored. The transaction fees are significantly lower. They're suddenly going to have a philosophical problem now when they've had every opportunity to migrate. As for the miners migrating, they'll migrate to whichever chain offers them the greatest ROI, not whichever chain agrees with their philosophy. They're a service provider. They perform a necessary service, nothing against miners, but don't believe for a moment that businesses are going to act against their economic best interest. They're always going to move where it makes sense, when it makes sense. And they'll do the calculation and see which chain is the case. Maybe some days of the week it'll be ETC. Maybe some days it'll be something else. But we can't count on that. So this is a crossroads, and the Mantis team is back in full swing. We have great partners like Lunatech working with it, dedicated product and project management on it. We're chirping away. We're making progress. It's been difficult at times, but the code quality is definitely maturing. We've written ECIPs about checkpointing, about Treasury, and so forth. I've joined the cooperative's board, and I've made my opinion very clear about what I think needs to happen. And in the coming months, the fight will occur. And hopefully the Treasury proposal gets accepted. It will require a hard fork, as will many other things in the roadmap. And if that gets through, there's now an innovation budget, and there's now a path forward. And at least 3 companies, independent companies, will have infrastructure budgets, engineering teams, and those companies can work together and create a compromise roadmap for the path forward for ETC. If the Treasury proposal doesn't pass, will ETC die? No. But it will linger on and on and on as an artifact of the past, like Feathercoin and dozens of these other projects that had some promise and potential at one point, if only they could find a way to get to the next level. I've seen a lot of them, like NXT and so forth, and it's sad because at one time they could have been great. So setting the drama aside and certain people in the ecosystem's tendency to just lie again and again and again, I've been here since the beginning. I've invested millions of dollars of my own money into this. We have yet to see a single dollar of return. No one gave me any ATC. If we have any, we had to buy it, take a position just like everybody else. And we put a lot of hard work and effort in, and I've taken enormous criticism for supporting Ethereum Classic, from my own community in the Cardano world to the broader ecosystem. I've had even people accuse me of being the DAO hacker because of my continued support of Ethereum Classic. Yeah, I'm still here because I care. And I honestly believe that philosophies like code is law should be explored to their logical extreme through certain projects. It may not be a mainstream philosophy, but it has every right to exist in the menu of ideas. But given that Ethereum Classic is losing its innovation budget, it's losing its innovation target, Ethereum is no longer going to be compatible with this, and there's going to be limited code transfer. We need a source of funding to ensure this continues, unless there's an expectation that people are just going to continue dumping millions of dollars of their own money on the same economic terms that a speculator gets, and less economic terms than a miner gets. and for what reason? And then you have to take a step back and look at the dApp developers and ask them honestly, why would they want to build on a platform using second generation technology that's dug its heels into the ground and made a decision that it will never get better and has no money to get better? And as the complexity increases, the probability of a catastrophic flaw, bug, security issue, especially going unfixed, increases. So we'll never get adoption. No adoption means a slow heat death of the cryptocurrency until it becomes a calcified, lumbering dead god floating in the astral plane. That's what we're looking at over the next 5, 10, 15 years, however long it takes. And the patrons will eventually abandon the ecosystem if there's no vision forward. I think it's a very balanced, pragmatic, reasonable proposal to say have 3 infrastructure companies which are independent, have the funds that they need to create a roadmap and build the technology over the coming months and years, and then write the philosophy down and clearly differentiate Ethereum Classic from Bitcoin, from Ethereum 2, from Cardano, and other ecosystems, and give that a chance for people to take that seriously when their values agree with that, and give them the tools that they need to build cool stuff. I think it'd be fun to look at all the things we could do, all the innovations we could do. And we know how to do that. We have a proven track record for that. And that's what's going to be decided over the coming months. In any event, it is what it is, and that's the nature of this space. We can disagree without being disagreeable. We can have different philosophies without the people who have different philosophies from you being evil. But I'm getting pretty goddamn tired of the people that disagree with me immediately saying I'm corrupt, dishonest, a sociopath, I have bad intentions. Even if a Treasury proposal was to pass, we probably will not make significant money from our participation in Ethereum Classic unless Ethereum Classic becomes overwhelmingly successful and enters the top 5 to top 3, which is a very unlikely event given all the competition in the cryptocurrency space and all the new things coming. So this is not something about money. This is about ensuring that what we leave behind, what we construct, is sustainable. That's the point. That's the point of getting to a point where people realize that when you pay a tax, the tax is paid by the Ether token holders, they should get value for the tax that they pay. Or else, why do we have inflation? And because we have the audacity to say that that doesn't belong to the miners automatically, even before they've done any work at all. And by the way, it's an inconsistent argument because the miners don't care if they get 8 tokens or 10 tokens. What they care about is what is the US dollar value of those tokens. Do a thought experiment. Would you rather mine chain A, where you get 8 tokens at $100, or chain B, where you get 10 tokens at $50? Which is better for you if you're going to sell them as soon as you get them because you're a business? And would you rather be in a chain that is stable, sustainable, with a roadmap and growth? Then maybe the miners actually hold the tokens instead of immediately divesting them, in which case they're actually invested in the value appreciation and growth of that ecosystem and exhibit less mercenary behavior. But apparently these basic concepts are completely lost by certain people in the Ethereum Classic ecosystem that continue to lie, do interviews, and other such things. So I'm getting tired of it. I really am. You know, if this is the kind of toxicity you give to people trying to help who spend their own money, why again would anybody want to come in and build in your ecosystem? Why? What's the point? It's a very small, very negative, very toxic club. And it gets smaller and smaller and smaller because the people in the room turn on each other, because there's always someone who's not holy enough. There's always someone who is the next target. We're just here to help. We've learned a lot along the way. Building a full Ethereum client was always something I wanted to do, and we did it. And, you know, we did it because it's the only Scala one around. There was no code to borrow, 100% handwritten. It was a great exercise, and we learned an enormous amount about how Ethereum works under the hood, the things that work well, the things that don't work well. There are no other clients in the ETC ecosystem that are 100% written from the ground up specifically for ETC. This took years of effort. It was the slow way, but it was the right way because it gave us a very clear path forward to build on without relying on Geth or other things from other ecosystems. And that experience alone was worth the price of admission. I'd like to continue on this journey with you, people in the ETC ecosystem. I really would. And I think there's a lot of great things we can do, from formal verification to sharding and so forth. But that will cost money, and it can't be done unilaterally. It needs to be done with independent development companies working together, debating each other, and coming to compromise through the ECIP process. We certainly can contribute, but others need to step up as well, and we need to have independent 100% new code bases that ensure that those code bases are for our ecosystem and they're high quality. So anyway, this is the last time I'm going to make a video about ETC up until when the Treasury proposal is going through. We'll see what happens. We'll see if the fork goes one way or the other. And I hope that greater reason prevails. If it doesn't, well, it was a good experiment in my view. And I met a lot of good people along the way, from Barry Silbert to others. And we certainly had a lot of fun together. And we certainly learned a lot from Mantis. We're going to use Mantis technology probably in Cardano for the pawn strategy as a side chain. It's been great going around and thinking about how to build this stuff. And, people move on. And I wish everybody well. But that's where we're at. And I've been nothing but honest about that. A lot of people don't like me perhaps because I'm too blunt and direct and I don't have as much diplomacy as I need to be. I'm not going to give anybody honeyed words. I just tell you how I see it because I don't have time to lie. I don't have time to be two-faced in this respect. If I see a problem, I let you know a problem. And the problem is, again, what we have right now doesn't work. And we're losing the ability to upgrade that to something that does. So we need to find a source of funding and teams capable of taking it somewhere else within the values that the community has decided over the last few years. That's the way I see it. I could be wrong, could have different values than you. Okay, now let's debate it. But please don't call me a corrupt asshole, a sociopath, other negative, horrible words, or question my morality or intentions. I've been nothing but straight about this the entire way through. So let's see what happens at the end of the year. Thank you guys so much.